Alrighty, good afternoon, everybody. Sorry, just checking out my stuff. Hey, Janine, how's it going? I have like a giant microphone thing in the way here. So welcome this afternoon. I'm hopping on here today to broach a topic that I actually talked about in my Yoga Mamas, Yoga Babies Facebook group last week, because I thought it could pertain to other people as well. So the topic is, what was your relationship with food growing up? And this question came about because I don't know how many times I've talked about it lately, that I have, I watch, or listen, I don't watch. Watching's a thing of the past. I listen to podcasts. And one of the podcasts that I listen to is called Food Psych, and it's all about intuitive eating and health at every size. And at the beginning of every interview, she asks, what was your relationship with food growing up? Which, funny enough, ends up always leading to conversations about when diet culture first entered someone's life. A lot of times people mentioned a specific event when they were a kid. Other times people were talking about a certain comment that kind of sparked things, or any number of things that come up. Some people, it doesn't even come up until college, which to me is baffling. So as I'm sitting in the car one day listening to podcasts, because that's what I do when I'm driving, I learn and do all kinds of stuff like that, I started asking myself, what was my relationship with food growing up, which was a really easy question to answer. But then I started thinking about when diet culture started becoming a factor in my life. And I started thinking about this and thinking, well, there wasn't a specific event or anything. It's just always been there, which doesn't make sense. We're not born thinking that something is wrong with the way we look or what we're eating or anything like that. In fact, all children, babies, are born intuitive eaters. They stop eating when they're not hungry, and they don't eat when they're not hungry. So don't worry if, your kid is fighting you at dinner. They'll eat tomorrow. I guarantee it. I shouldn't say that. I should say, barring any underlying problems. But healthy, normal people, they will eat when they are babies. They will eat when they are hungry. They will not eat when they're not hungry, and that's just the way it is. So I actually started tracing everything backwards, trying to figure out when things kind of started happening. And I won't go the backwards route today, which is what I did in the Yoga Mamas, Yoga Babies group. And if you are interested in joining that group, you can find it on Facebook under Body Mind Yoga's Yoga Mamas, Yoga Babies. For now, it will be changing shortly. So if you're having trouble finding it, just send me a message and I'll send you a link to the group. It is a closed group and a space where you can just kind of open up, and I try to put stuff out there that is sent to me mostly via private messaging as of right now, because sometimes people are a little bit shy. But anyways, back to the topic at hand. So I started thinking about diet culture, and I did trace everything backwards, and what I ended up finding out is that my relationship with diet culture started when I was 8 years old, which is dumbfounding. 8 years old is when it started, and it makes me a little bit sad to think about that, especially because right now I have a 12-year-old stepdaughter, and to think of the fact that diet culture is an issue in her lifestyle just makes me sick to my stomach. And I also have two young girls, 2 and almost 7 months, and the idea of, in the next handful of years, diet culture becoming an issue to them, I don't even want to think about it, to be honest. I just want to create healthy relationships with food and bodies in front of my children. Other people can do, whatever they're going to do later on down the road. You can't stop everything from happening. So anyways, how it started when I was 8 years old is I took the school bus every day. I went to French immersion school growing up, and I never lived in the neighborhood of a French immersion school. I felt like I was always the last stop actually on the school bus, but I digress. So I took the school bus every day, and I was a kid that could look out the window and just enjoy watching the scenery, same exact thing every day, and not have an issue with it. So it was winter. I remember that because I was wearing this giant snowsuit, and this giant snowsuit actually came from my mother, who was very petite, short, and we used to live in Newfoundland, and at this point we were not living in Newfoundland, but we were living in Newfoundland, and I got distracted. Sorry, I sometimes go through these brain farts. So I was wearing this giant snowsuit, and nobody ever really sat with me because I was just a kid who looked out the window. I didn't really talk much unless I was spoken to. I just kind of like taking it all in. Anyways, we had come from Port aux Basques, Newfoundland, and Gander, Newfoundland. You can Google those, especially Port aux Basques, you may have not heard of. And my mom had this giant puffy snowsuit, and it was the warmest thing ever. I was so excited when she gave it to me because it was so warm. So at the time, I had a girl who was the sister of a boy in my class who was 2 years older than me, and she sat down with me starting one particular day. I'm not quite sure why, and she just started talking to me. So I started talking to her back, and I felt like super cool because older people want to talk to me. Like, you know, she was 10. Like, that seemed like super much older than yeah. Anyways, 8-year-old brain, right? So she kept sitting beside me, and what felt to my 8-year-old brain at the time, as being months later, she leaned on me one day and then sat back up really quickly and said, "Oh, it's your snowsuit that's puffy. I thought you were just fat." And I didn't think anything of it initially, aside from, phew, good thing I am not fat, because she clearly seemed like she was speaking about it like it was like a bad thing. But this was the beginning of analyzing the way my body showed up in the world and to my own eyes, as never being good enough. And external forces, as the years went on, kept reminding about that. So 8 years old is the first time, and it's not the first time I've heard of diet culture being introduced to someone who's that young. And usually it's not comments that I don't think are purposely meant to hurt feelings, or maybe people just kind of say them in this weird brushed off sense, and they don't think that they're saying anything wrong. I'm not sure why, to be honest. I've never really been that kind of person, not that I know of. If I was, though, and you're listening to this right now, please send me a message and let me know, so I can apologize profusely. So at 8 years old, I would not say this was the start of my disordered eating. It was a culmination, though, of things that came up throughout my life. So my disordered eating actually started in 2006, and you may have read my blog about it. I was living in New York City at the time. I was in acting school, and I went to an audition. I feel like it's still hard to talk about. I went to an audition, and I thought it went really well. And then the casting director said to me, "If you ever want to make it in this industry, you're going to have to lose such and such amount of weight." I'm not even going to say it in case it's triggering to somebody. Such and such amount of weight and get a nose job. In my personal opinion, I did not have the room to lose such and such weight, and I eventually did, and it became the big pink elephant in the room that, oh, she's too skinny, but nobody's going to really talk about it. So, again, this is just another stepping stone. Other things that came up around the time that I moved back home to Canada from New York, my sister was actually diagnosed with Crohn's disease. For those of you who don't know it has to do with intestinal situation. She's limited in certain foods that she can eat, and especially while she was trying to figure out her limitations on things, she lost a lot of weight, and people kept commenting, "Oh, she's so skinny, and look, not necessarily in the sense of she's too skinny and that's awesome, but not she's too skinny and that's kind of scary too. It was just one of those things. I mean, I don't wish, I'm knocking on wood right now, for anybody to have Crohn's disease. It's not a pleasant thing. I know through my sister and through some people my sister know, it's not anything that I would wish on anybody that I know. But this was something else that did contribute. This is another story that contributed again to me analyzing my own body. And when they would say, "Oh, she's down to such and such weight," I would say, "Wow, I I can get down to such and such weight. And then I would do pretty disordered things in order to get down to such and such weight, which I eventually did. Again, I'm not giving specific numbers. I'm not even going to tell you certain diets that I partake in, because I don't want you Googling it if you're sensitive to those sort of things. Before leaving New York, I had a boyfriend who I was with for a long time, and he really reinforced to me a lot that he preferred skinnier girls, and that contributed to it as well. At one point, this isn't even a real diet, so I'm going to talk about it. At one point, I was sustaining myself on vitamin water and Doritos. Doritos, yes. Part of this had to do with the fact that I didn't have money. My work permit in the States came in late, and I didn't really have the money for proper groceries. And for some reason, I thought Doritos was going to keep me fuller for longer. And it wasn't even, looking back on it, I mean, I'm talking about it as a diet, but that was my survival mode at the time, so I shouldn't even lump it into my way of trying to lose weight, because that wasn't it at all. But I did try to limit myself in terms of taking the don't eat past the point where you're satisfied. I took that to way too far of an extreme. And I had this weird thing where, like, when I would get starving, it was almost a point of pride, like, oh, I've got complete control over this situation, because I'm starving. And then I would eat the very little amount to not basically feel starving anymore. I would drink lots of water, all kinds of stuff, and skipping meals. And then even going back further into high school, I was sharing like a small fry with my best friend, because I still loved French fries, but I had to limit how many I had, and the small in my mind was just too big in cafeteria food, but whatever. And even going back before high school, throwing away parts of my lunch. And the first time I remember actually saying something about my weight was I was 10, and I was at a birthday party eating cake, and I was mentioning that I just hadn't lost my baby fat yet, which again dumbfounds me that at 10 years old, these ideas were already starting to seep into my brain. So just a little bit of my backstory. None of this is meant to, I hope, I've tried really hard not to trigger anybody in terms of certain things, but it is important to think about the fact that if you think back to the diets that were popular in, say, high school for you, if you're somewhere around my age, or before that if you're older, what diets there were then don't exist now. Just give that a moment to seep in. If they really worked, why isn't anybody doing them now? And that's a lot where the idea of intuitive eating really comes in for me. I've gotten to the point in my life where I'm just going to be what I am. I've talked about before that I'm someone who, when I nurse, I can't lose any weight. As soon as I start to lose weight, I notice a significant drop in my breast milk supply. It's more important for me currently, at this point in time in my life, to nurse my child than to lose weight. So that is what it is. But I do believe that we are all meant to be a certain size. Not all of us are going to fit into a size 2 or a size 6 or anything, in the same way that we don't all wear the same shoe size, and we're not all the same height. We are all built differently, and it's important to acknowledge that, because if we are all built differently in these little areas such as our shoe size and our height, why would we all be meant to be a certain size? It really doesn't make any sense. So I will be hopping back on here at another point, because I really don't want this to be super long, to discuss about my own journey with intuitive eating. It is still a work in progress, and in my opinion, it's a smidge too early for me to jump into that at this particular point in time. Because number one thing, when you're approaching intuitive eating, and there is a book called Intuitive Eating, if you're interested to check that out. I should have brought my copy. No, my computer isn't even resting on it. The very first step of intuitive eating is to basically throw away diet culture. And this first step was the hardest one for me. I mean, I was in acting, which is hugely steeped in diet culture. I'm a personal trainer, hugely steeped in diet culture. at least traditionally, I do find that I'm in a place where I'm able to kind of meld the two together in a way that's really successful, because not everyone has the goal of losing weight when they're working with me as a personal trainer. I don't have that goal anymore. My goal is to be strong and energetic so I can, run around all day and have fun in the sun and all kinds of stuff like that. So just a few things to just think about. Like, I know it's hard because, especially in the world of social media, we are constantly being bombarded by images of what a yogi is supposed to look like, or what a trainer is supposed to look like, or what you are supposed to look like in everyday life. And it's really hard to step aside and look at it separately. But yes, if you are curious about intuitive eating, the very first step is not using it as a weight loss thing, because if you are doing it, you could potentially not lose weight. You could potentially just find yourself at the weight you are naturally, which is empowering, in my opinion, especially in this day and age. So yeah, I wouldn't even look into it. As soon as you put a rule to eating food, as soon as you put some sort of restriction of what you can and can't eat, unless it's medical, unless there's some reason that you can't eat it legitimately, then it's not intuitive eating. So just keep that in mind if it is something that you would like to broach. Again, the podcast I listen to is Food Psych, really great resource for intuitive eating. It was what kind of launched me into thinking about it. So just a couple of comments here. Love this. I find a lot of people weigh themselves constantly. I remember my mom always told me a number I should be under. Yes. I would like to point out the fact that at my fittest, when I felt the leanest, when I felt like my clothes fit the best, I was 153 pounds. And I can post a picture maybe at some point and show this picture, because I was dumbfounded when I looked at the picture and I was like, oh, I look awesome. And I don't own a scale. I don't typically step on one because I don't want that number in front of me. But I was like, oh, I'm curious. What's going on here? I wonder what I weigh now, and et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, what? And it was an eye-opener for me. And I even periodically showed, when I was teaching boot camp classes, I periodically showed this before and after, where this woman looked much more slender one, and there was I think a 1 pound weight gain between the two or something. But there's tons of images like that online, so I highly encourage you to go online and start following people that are strong and athletic and who aren't your cookie cutter mold of what somebody thinks you should be. It's just crazy to me. One other comment here. Awesome. I definitely found that when I stopped thinking about a number and started focusing on my energy level and how I felt, things had a huge shift for me. I love that. I absolutely love that. Thank you for sharing that. I definitely feel the same way. And yeah, I'm in this place in my life where whenever I hear somebody talking about weight or how they feel in their bodies, or the how come this such and such state, I'm going to start such and such diet, it really breaks my heart. But I also know that a lot of times these people aren't really ready to listen to these types of messages until they're ready. And if that's what it is, that's what it is. So just some things to keep in mind. Again, this was more of kind of a realization that I made. Like I said, diet culture entering my life at 8 years old. Still makes me really sad to think about it. And this realization was something that I did want to share. Going from really thinking about it and thinking, oh, diet culture has just always been there, to realizing that it was a silly comment made by a 10-year-old on a school bus that started making me analyze things. And again, it was just that little starter thing, and then as the years went on, things progressed and progressed. So thank you so much for tuning in. If any of this resonated with you at all, please feel free to comment or send me a direct message if you're not comfortable doing it publicly. I like to know that what I'm putting out there is resonating with you. And again, I've got some things coming up that were requested, so I'm really excited to start sharing that. And if you are a mama, feel free to head on over to the Yoga Mamas Yoga Babies Facebook group. You can find that link through the link in my bio on Instagram, I believe. And if you're having trouble finding it, just feel free to send me a message and I will send you the direct link to find it. So it is a closed group, so my goal is to just create a safe space where you can ask anything related to health, fitness, mamahood. That was my goal creating the group. So thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for allowing me the space to talk about my own journey, because I'm definitely at a place in my life where things are much different and my whole entire perspective is changing. And I'm really looking forward to hearing from you. So whether you're watching this live, you can say a little hello if I haven't seen you yet. Or feel free to comment below. Let me know if you have any questions, comments, concerns, anything you'd like to hear more about. And even maybe let me know what your first introduction to diet culture was. It's a topic that's really fascinating me right now just because it's really at the forefront of my mind. But yeah, if you've got nothing else, no comments left. Awesome. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you have a wonderful day. And I think I'm going to catch a nap because I managed to get both down at the exact same time. Here's hoping that continues for like a really long time, but let's face it, probably not. All right, gang, treat yourself like someone you care about, and I'll talk to you soon.